I'd like to talk briefly about the significance of these hacked emails. The Climatic Research Unit at the University of East Anglia, they had their server hacked, and somebody found thousands of emails which they've been sending back and forth for the past 10 years or so. And most of the emails were completely innocuous, but there were a few which did seem a bit dodgy. One or two discussing data, it's not quite so clear what they meant, but the ones which disturbed me most were the ones talking about effectively suppressing information and not letting the public see it, and perhaps keeping other people out of scientific journals, and they didn't look too good. And this has been blown up massively by the climate change denial industry to say, aha, we told you so, it was all a great conspiracy after all. This was entirely conducted by a small cabal of about 100,000 scientists and about 1 million politicians who have secretly concocted an entire canon of science. And here we have the smoking gun which demonstrates that this is true. Of course, what it doesn't show is that the entire canon of climate science is wrong. However, this thing exploded like a nuclear bomb across the media. It was a fascinating exercise in how a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth has got its trousers on. The whole process was assisted with great panache by the absolutely diabolical response of the University of East Anglia and the Climatic Research Unit whose emails have been hacked. It was a textbook study of how not to engage with the media over an issue of important public policy. What happened to begin with was that they had prior notice that these emails had been hacked and that someone was trying to put them in the public domain, whereupon the Climatic Research Unit roared into action and did nothing. Absolutely nothing for 3 days. They just waited for this train which was coming down the tracks towards them to run them over. And then finally the story broke on the Friday morning of that week, I think the third week in November. And as soon as I heard about this, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I phoned them up and said, what's going on? And they say, we're not in a position to give you a statement yet. And I said, what do you mean you're not in a position to give us a statement? This is a bigger story which has ever hit you guys. This is going to be the defining event in your lives and your careers. And you're not in a position to give us a statement? We'll get back to you in an hour. Of course, no one gets back to us. So in the meantime, my friend from Greenpeace rings them up and says, what the hell's going on? You're getting blow after blow landed on you and you're not doing anything about it. And they said, we'll get back to you in an hour. So eventually, a friend of mine gets through to the scientist right at the centre of all these emails and says, can you comment on what's happening? And he said, no comment, slammed down the phone, which, as far as the media is concerned, that means guilty as charged. The whole thing was a catastrophe. And the only people getting out there and fighting these guys are environmentalists. And of course, what happens, you get in the studio, because you can't find any bloody climate scientists to do it, you get in the studio, and the first thing they said is, you're not a climate scientist. And he said, well, sure, I'm not a bloody climate scientist, but I can tell you what the significance is and the rest of it. They said, oh, you can't, you're not a climate scientist. And he said, where are these scientists? Eventually, after 2 weeks, I kid you not, after 2 weeks, the University of East Anglia finally fielded someone. And this guy had obviously been locked in the fume cupboard for about 15 years. He hadn't seen daylight since the Jurassic. He had a beard down to his chest. He was covered in ginger hair in his entire body. I don't really know what he looked like, but you get the basic idea. And they throw him into the Newsnight studio. Now, the Newsnight studio is like the lion's den, So anyway, these guys get in, and I better put this on the stand to show you what happens. And Morano's down the line, and this bloke is sitting in the studio, and he obviously doesn't realise that when the other guy's talking, the camera sometimes comes onto him. So he's just, the whole time he's going... And unaware that obviously the cameras are still running, he's still in the studio, he goes, Christ, what an arsehole. I sometimes feel that we in the environmental community are up against two enemies here. One is the climate change deniers and the other is the climate change scientists. They're the biggest liability you can ever deal with. Very few scientists are capable of a wide range of human communication, but these guys are the pits. They are really, really bad at it, with very few exceptions. The universities have just left these guys to swing, and there's been almost no fight back from the science community. These guys have been involved in the most brutal and bloody warfare with the climate change denial industry, and they have not managed to raise themselves to a media strategy of any kind whatsoever. And so again and again, even though all the facts are on their side, all the science is on their side, they get pasted by these climate change deniers, pasted by the most useless frauds and charlatans, who should be so easy to knock out of their chairs, and yet they just smoothly and blandly dismiss the science. They perform what's called the Gish Gallop very often. This is a very effective technique perfected by a creationist called Dwayne Gish, and taken up a lot by these climate change deniers, which is just to belt out a load of fabrications, bang, 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 bang. And it seems to me that in some cases they deliberately make them as crazy and as absurd as possible, because it gives them a fantastic advantage. It takes 30 seconds to tell a lie about a scientific issue. It takes 30 minutes to explain why that's a lie, what the truth really is, and what the data series show, and actually what the radio songs and the satellites versus the ground-based temperature station. It's impossible to keep up with that level of fabrication. I've now found that the only successful technique, and it seemed to work very well when I took on Ian Plimer yesterday on ABC Late Line, and I do suggest you take a look at it. The successful technique I've found is to go into the studio with 2 or 3 of the most overt fabrications which this person makes and keeps making, and to just stick with those and just say, you said this, you know it's untrue, it's been pointed out to you that it's untrue, you said it again, you were lying. And then you just keep banging on and pressing them and not letting them evade it.